That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, we're going to go through and we are going to be looking at the upcoming class of wide receivers. Now, not going to be talking rookies. Of course, we'll be talking rookies in so many other videos on this channel, but instead, I think it's maybe a little more important at this point of the season to focus in on all the free agents this offseason, because that's going to, A, change the value of those free agents as we approach that period. And also, we're going to need to understand, hell, if Chris Godwin, if Antonio Brown may be out of Tampa, obviously Antonio Brown is, how does that change a player's value like Tyler Johnson? We're going to dive into all of that. But of course, before we do, please go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel. Only if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. If you're a casual NFL fan, this video may help you out if you're just looking for what you can find in free agency this offseason. But I promise you, every other video here is just going to be about Dynasty. And of course, leave that comment telling me how stupid I am, because I am truly an idiot and I love it when you tell me that. And lastly, if you don't think I am the dumbest person on the planet, which you probably should, you can decide to go and support the channel on Patreon. On Patreon, you get access to our Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings. You get access to our Dynasty Rookie rankings. You can get into a Dynasty Fantasy Football League with us. You get, a Fantasy Flock Network. You get so many things. Of course, you can find all the links down there in the description. I think that should be it. Let's go through and let's dive into this list. And let's start it off with the Cleveland Browns. We're going to go team by team. That way we can just have a quick overview. And I know with Cleveland, it doesn't necessarily look like too many things are going to change. I'm going to get Rashad Higgins, who's going to be a free agent this upcoming offseason. But they've already let go of Odell Beckham Jr. So we know that a wide receiver like Donovan Peoples-Jones, he was getting a considerable amount of snaps at the end of the season. Now, I think that you are only going to continue to see receivers change in this room, because if you're looking at right now, their number one receiver on the roster, I know he's their number one guy. I know Cleveland Browns fans love him for whatever reason, but Jarvis Landry will not be with this team next year. Now, yes, he's under contract for 2022. I understand that, but if you're looking at the guaranteed money that he has, it's non-existent. He has $1.5 million guaranteed, which at the running back position, sure, that's a lot. But no, at receiver, that's nothing. Whenever if they decide to keep Jarvis Landry on this roster, they're going to have to pay him $16.5 million. So they can save $15 million by letting go of 30-year-old Jarvis Landry. I am no rocket scientist, but I am able to tell you that Jarvis is either going to be getting a new contract this offseason in restructuring this deal, or he will not be playing in Cleveland in 2022. Now, for Jarvis Landry himself, I don't know if you want to say that's a good thing. Maybe he finds his way into an offense that has more passing volume. I don't really even want to look into Jarvis Landry. I think he's very much a role-dependent wide receiver, and if he's not going to go to a team with a lot of targets available, he's never going to be very efficient with his targets. So I'm not a Jarvis Landry fan. Never really have been a Jarvis Landry fan, at least in his stint in Cleveland. However, this does have an impact for Donovan Peoples-Jones. Now, with Donovan Peoples-Jones, y'all know if you were watching our redraft channel this season, I was throwing a bunch of hate on him because, he is a big play wide receiver that if you don't know who Donovan Peoples-Jones is, let me take a step back. He was actually the number one high school recruit in that 2017 high school recruiting class, goes to Michigan, doesn't really do anything there, was one of the most disappointing players in college football. But then he gets to the NFL Combine, and you can kind of see why he was that number one high school recruit. He is a size-adjusted athletic freak. One of the most athletic players there. And if you're looking at his size, it's very impressive. And then he goes in the NFL draft, flashes as a rookie, flashes as a sophomore at the same time. So a lot of people are willing to buy right back into Donovan Peoples-Jones from the hype that he had back in 2017 whenever he was 18 years old. I think it's a good idea to possibly get Donovan Peoples-Jones as a throw-in in a dynasty trade right now. But that's because not many people are looking at how this wide receiver room is going to shape up, where I think that once you kind of see the writing on the wall and you know that Jarvis Landry is going to be getting cut from this team, once that's just common knowledge throughout Dynasty Fantasy Football, Donovan Peoples-Jones will see his price just rise slowly but surely every single day that people are beginning to talk about Jarvis no longer being in Cleveland. Please let me know if I'm wrong in the comment section, but I haven't heard anybody talk about this, which is surprising. So I'm going to be buying Donovan Peoples-Jones now on the low, of course, with hopes to be able to go through and sell him whenever he has some hype building with the release of Jarvis Landry later this offseason. And obviously, we don't know if Higgins is going to be coming back either. But let's go back to our next team, one of the most prolific offenses. And I hate making this video right now because I'm making this before they play the Philadelphia Eagles in round 1. And I think this video is going to come out the day after. But let's talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here with Chris Godwin, obviously the devastating injury, tearing his tearing his MCL and his ACL at the end of the season. Obviously, they have Antonio Brown gone as well. Antonio Brown tearing his shirt whenever he took it off of him at that end of the Jets game. So now it looks like there are going to be a considerable amount of targets available in Tampa this upcoming season. I mean, even if they decide to bring Chris Godwin back based on how just late in the season that injury was. I mean, it's not like Godwin's going to be a guaranteed player to be good to go in week 1 this upcoming season. We don't even know if they decide to bring him back. Maybe they decide to let Chris Godwin walk based on that injury and look to try to address the position in the NFL draft or with a different free agent. I would say Tyler Johnson is an intriguing wide receiver to go after right now. I know Tyler Johnson wasn't the one-for-one fill-in whenever you had the following week with the New York Jets and Antonio Brown leaving, but still, if we're just looking at the depth chart and you're looking at the player profiles of what you have with these guys, Tyler Johnson's the one player that looks like he could see a considerable amount of targets. I mean, they have some other receivers in the roster that are more so just field stretching options, where Tyler Johnson, not an athletic guy whatsoever, ran a 4.70 40-yard dash, but we know that doesn't really matter at the NFL level for the receiver position. Definitely matters at tight end, definitely matters at running back, but historically speaking, it doesn't matter at receiver. And if you're looking at his collegiate profile, he was dominant and he broke out at a very early age as well, which is what matters. Still extremely young, drafted in 2020. I mean, this is a receiver that's 23 years old. So Tyler Johnson could be an intriguing pickup in Dynasty based on the free agents in Tampa. And now our next team is going to be the Green Bay Packers, where I'm not going to lie, I have no idea what to tell y'all. I mean, here you have Davante Adams going to be a free agent. Now, of course, Davante Adams, he's getting the franchise tag. We don't know if he's going to say, I'm not playing under the franchise tag, and then he's going to demand a massive contract. We don't know if he's going to say, I'm not playing under the franchise tag, and then they're going to end up having to ship him off. I would imagine that Davante Adams just gets a massive deal. That's usually what happens here. But beyond this, I mean, they have some other players that we need to look at. They have Equanimeous St. Brown, Allen Lazard, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. All players that have played a considerable amount of snaps for them at the receiver position over the past few seasons. They're all free agents. And now, of course, we can assume that they're probably bringing back a player or two. Of course, we can assume that they're probably going to be trying to keep a guy like Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who obviously provides a good role of that field stretching receiver. And that's not necessarily something that Davante Adams is. They need that field stretching receiver on the outside to draw safety attention back. That way Davante Adams can work his way underneath. Now, something that could be intriguing, and I don't want to get too excited because he definitely was a very bad rookie wide receiver. But I mean, if we're looking at this depth chart, let's not forget Amari Rodgers, where with Amari Rodgers, yeah, he didn't really work his way onto the field year 1. But if we get this wide receiver room just churning in and out guys, they're probably going to bring in a rookie wide receiver. They're probably also going to look to free agency to see if they can bring in someone from a different franchise. I understand that. There's going to be a lot of turmoil in this wide receiver room, but it looks like there's a chance that Davante Adams and Amari Rodgers are like the only receivers that are coming back to this Green Bay Packers team. Probably not going to be the case, but there's an outside chance. I would go and look at Amari Rodgers for the cheap. And now going over to the Chicago Bears, really the only thing we need to be talking about is Allen Robinson departing. With Allen Robinson, I would be unbelievably surprised if he did make his way back to Chicago. I mean, I think this is a clear spot where Allen Robinson will be looking for greener pastures, maybe just looking to get paid. We don't know what Allen Robinson is going to be doing. I would say at this point, Allen Robinson's not a player that I'm going to be looking to sell in Dynasty Fantasy Football because I know not many people are talking about the free agent class right now, but I promise you, once we get to NFL free agency, every single Dynasty YouTube channel, every single Dynasty podcast, every single Dynasty group chat, they're all going to be talking about the same handful of players guys like Allen Robinson, and there's always going to be one or two people in your league that are going to be very excited about their new landing spots, and they're going to be willing to go pay a higher price than they should. I mean, the perfect example that we gave a long time ago is going back to the Green Bay Packers. Remember when they signed Devin Funchess and everybody was just losing their minds? They were willing to pay second-round rookie picks for Devin Funchess in Dynasty, which was laughable, of course. And I mean, you could also say that happened. I don't want to say that happened when he went to Green Bay, more so that happened when he went to Indianapolis. But the point remains, you see that whenever we have a microscope on the free agent class, usually you're going to be able to get something better in return. And Allen Robinson has the name value. I loved him this past year in redraft leagues. Obviously, we got burnt. Maybe I'm just a little bit biased here based on how dirty Allen Robinson did us. But I'm personally going to be looking to sell the second that he signs, regardless of the team he goes to, unless maybe he stays in division, maybe to try to get Aaron Rodgers back in Green Bay. They decide to give Devontae Adams a massive contract and decide to bring in Allen Robinson. We don't know. I would say let's hold on to Allen Robinson just for now. Let's look to sell once he signs somewhere else. And someone else that I'm going to be looking to sell will be Darnell Mooney. Now, the reason I'm looking to sell Darnell Mooney is while, yes, he was a very impressive rookie wide receiver, while, yes, he was way better in year 2 than I expected him to be. Still, I think people are overhyping Darnell Mooney. Now, I will be the first person to admit he was a better wide receiver this season than Allen Robinson. But what exactly does that mean from a fantasy football perspective? And this is something, Jan, I hope you're watching this video. I have to throw you under the bus a little bit because y'all know we actually went through and we said if Darnell Mooney was a top 20 receiver, top 15 receiver, I don't remember exactly what it was on a points per game basis. I would go through and I would chug a beer out of my shoe on the live stream because I just knew it wasn't going to happen. I mean, we knew it was not going to happen with Darnell Mooney. And we had a lot of people reaching out to us going, ooh, Mason, are you losing that bet? Are you losing that bet? Darnell Mooney had a pretty good season. Everybody loves Darnell Mooney. Or if you go weeks 1 through 16 and look at a points per game basis with where Darnell Mooney stands, the wide receiver 37. What are we talking about here? I mean, behind Corey Davis, Henry Ruggs, Christian Kirk. I think that still people are a little bit too excited about Darnell Mooney. It's not like Allen Robinson was commanding a lot of targets in Chicago this year. So even if Allen Robinson is gone, it's not like there are going to be way more targets going in the direction of Darnell Mooney. So I'm honestly going to be looking to sell. Not to mention, this is also a team that probably looks to bring someone in. Now, going over to another offense, we have Pittsburgh, where you have Juju Smith-Schuster, James Washington, and Ray McCloud, all as free agents. Don't necessarily know what to expect here. I mean, I don't want to come out here and act like, oh, Juju Smith-Schuster's coming back, Juju's leaving, this has a massive impact. I don't know. I would say that maybe you want to go through and try to buy the dip with Chase Claypool, just hoping that they can go through and find a solution at the quarterback position. I know it's a lot easier said than done, but there will be targets available in Pittsburgh this upcoming season. We don't know who's going to be at quarterback, but can it be that much worse than what you had with Ben Roethlisberger this past year? I don't know what to say. There are going to be targets available in Pittsburgh. You had a lot of players leaving, and very similar to the New York Jets, where, I mean, you got Keelan Cole, Jamison Crowder, Braxton Berrios. So, I mean, with those players all as free agents, of course, they can bring a player back or two. We don't know. But what I do know is Elijah Moore looking like he's going to be a fantastic value. I mean, Elijah Moore as a rookie going through outproducing what you had with Darnell Mooney on a points per game basis. With Elijah Moore, I mean, he was the lone bright spot, in my opinion, of this New York Jets offense. If you're just looking at the fact that, I mean, regardless of who the quarterback was there, I mean, he was very impressive in the middle part of the season whenever he was able to play. I would imagine that Elijah Moore actually would have came back at the end of the year if it wasn't for the fact that this New York Jets season was completely just done for. And I mean, maybe I'm biased, although I loved Elijah Moore in that 2020 draft class. I mean, this is a receiver that checked every single box. I mean, he was a great athlete. Y'all know I don't really care too much about the athletic profile of rookie wide receivers, but what I did care about with Elijah Moore is the fact that he was dominant in the SEC with the production that he had. I mean, he came out and had 150 receiving yards on a per game basis his final season at Ole Miss, which, I mean, if you're looking at it, it's not like that was one of the most prolific offenses in the NFL. No, that was a bad Ole Miss offense. I mean, if you're looking at 2019, Elijah Moore as a true sophomore, the second that A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf left Ole Miss, he came out, had over 800 receiving yards when the next best wide receiver on the team didn't have 200. Like, Elijah Moore is a receiver that I'm going to be going in just aggressively on in year 2. I don't necessarily know what to expect with the passing offense in general. I don't know if he's going to be able to overcome Zach Wilson. But if you're removing some of these slot wide receivers from this offense, I think that you're going to get more slot wide receiver snaps for Elijah Moore himself, where Elijah Moore can play the flanker position on the outside. I mean, he can be the guy that are running the crossing routes. I don't want that. I want Elijah Moore in the slot. And I think Elijah Moore can be one of the more dynamic slot wide receivers in the NFL. And I think that could be great for his dynasty fantasy football production. Pretty much, I think Elijah Moore can be what we wanted Christian Kirk to be back in that 2018 draft class. Now, let's stay in division. Let's go over to the New England Patriots, where you got Jacoby Myers. I mean, with Jacoby Myers, I don't necessarily know if this is going to be a guy coming back to New England. I think that if you do see Jacoby Myers leave New England, a sneaky buy low candidate, instead of going over to Kendrick Bourne, who will be everybody's first answer, maybe Hunter Henry. I mean, if you're going over and looking at the fact that targets will have to go somewhere, and we know that those running backs, I mean, in Damian Harris is never going to be able to command targets out of the backfield based on what we have seen so far in his NFL career. I mean, they're going to have to funnel those targets somewhere. The New England Patriots have been historically bad at trying to identify free agent as well as, I mean, especially rookie wide receivers that they can go out there and pursue. So I'd imagine that, I mean, maybe Hunter Henry going into year 2 for the New England Patriots gets a short uptick in volume. But in reality, if I was New England, if I was Bill Belichick, we'd be trying to bring back Jacoby Myers just because this team has been so damn bad in the NFL draft, just failing rookie wide receiver after rookie wide receiver after rookie wide receiver. I mean, this isn't a recency bias thing with N'Keal Harry. If you look at the past decade with how they've gone through and drafted those receivers in the first 3 rounds, pretty much it's just a bust after bust after bust after bust after bust. Now, last team we got to talk about in the division will be the Miami Dolphins. You got Will Fuller leaving. I'll say with Will Fuller, I mean, I would be very surprised if he goes back to Miami. I don't know why he wasn't playing this year. If you're talking about a best ball format, I think you could be intrigued with Will Fuller just based on the week-to-week upside that he has, based on the speed. But I mean, he signed a 1-year, I believe it was $8 million prove-it contract with Miami, essentially saying, hey, can you prove that you can stay healthy? Clearly, he couldn't stay healthy. I believe he played 1 game this past season. So with Will Fuller leaving, it doesn't have really any impact at all in Miami because he wasn't on the field to begin with. And I don't really think that we need to be looking at Will Fuller either. I think it would be a great fit if they decided to replace Marquez Valdes-Scantling with Will Fuller in Green Bay. I think that would be fantastic if he can stay healthy. But of course, I mean, y'all know I'm not necessarily the guy to go through and label players injury prone. I think Will Fuller is one of those guys you can safely say, I mean, definitely at an increased risk of injury. Now, going over to the West Coast, let's go to Los Angeles. Talk about the Los Angeles Rams real quick, where you got Odell Beckham Jr. as an upcoming free agent. Now, I don't know what to expect here, and I hate to say this, but I think that with Odell Beckham Jr., this is going to be one of the very rare instances that the playoffs are actually going to matter. I think that if you see Odell, say the Rams play 2 games in the playoffs and Odell comes out, he has over 100 receiving yards each game, and he really looks like he is a fundamental piece of this Los Angeles Rams offense, then I think they're going to have to go through and they're going to have to pay him a considerable amount of money. And I do want to address Robert Woods real quick, where with Robert Woods, I've heard a lot of people saying, okay, well, Robert Woods could be leaving this team as well this upcoming year. That's not true. If you look at the contract, I mean, Robert Woods is, yes, owed a considerable amount of money. I mean, they're going to have to pay him $15.7 million for him to come back, but $12.1 million of that's guaranteed. So Robert Woods is coming back. I know on Spotrac right now, if you look at it, they say that he's cuttable. I would be unbelievably surprised if they go through and they decide to cut Robert Woods to save $3.5 million. They're bringing back Robert Woods. I mean, in 2023, then maybe they decide to move on from him whenever he's going to be 31 years old, dependent on his health this upcoming season. But Robert Woods will make it back. It just really does come down to Odell Beckham Jr. And now our next team staying in that same city will be the Los Angeles Chargers. We got Mike Williams as well as Jalen Guyton. And I know not many people are going to be talking about Jalen Guyton here, but if you're looking at these snaps played from wide receivers in Los Angeles, Guyton's an every down player. I mean, Guyton, yes, he's just the field stretching wide receiver, not really commanding many targets in this offense, but this is someone that is playing pretty much every single snap. So if he were to go to a different team, I mean, you definitely have some appeal with the wide receiver 3 spot here. I mean, I would imagine that they try to bring back Mike Williams based on how he affects just opposing defenses on the outside and how he lets Keenan Allen run over the middle of the field with a little more space. Now, I think this kind of shapes up to saying, well, you know what? Amari Rodgers, a rookie wide receiver that failed year one, possibly an intriguing pickup in Green Bay. And maybe you can say the same thing about Josh Palmer. I mean, I didn't really like Josh Palmer, the receiver prospect coming out of Tennessee this past draft class. But, I mean, if he is going to be playing with Justin Herbert, one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL right now, and you have Jalen Guyton and Mike Williams possibly leaving, that could be an interesting call. Now let's go over to our next team. You got DJ Chark for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm selling low on DJ Chark. DJ Chark was actually someone I was telling people to buy low on last offseason. And yeah, he lost a considerable amount of value, obviously just going down for the year at the very beginning of the season with this injury. And I will say at this point, it's a lesson that I have learned from playing Dynasty Fantasy Football for so long. I mean, if you asked me about this, say back in 2016, in the same exact situation played out where a wide receiver that I liked, we thought we were buying the all-time dip based on an injury. And then all of a sudden the following season, he lost a considerable amount of value as well based on another injury being out for the year. His price was cut in half again. I would be just banging the drum as loud as I could be saying this is the best value in Dynasty. I mean, nothing has changed. It's a little bit of a different story. In reality, this isn't Madden. In reality, with DJ Chark being a free agent this upcoming year, when you've only had one solid season in 2019, while yes, it shows a lot of upside, I think people in Dynasty Fantasy Football maybe are a little bit too excited about DJ Chark and his potential, whereas what's actually going to happen is I think he just gets phased out of the NFL. I mean, I think that he does get signed to a team, but I don't really think that he has a large role, and I don't think that we ever get, another startable season from DJ Chark. Now, going over to a couple other notable names, you got Michael Gallup for Dallas with a ton of other receivers. I mean, you got Cedric Wilson, Noah Brown, Malik Turner, also all upcoming free agents. And Amari Cooper had, a cuttable contract. Now, with Amari, this was going to be an intriguing conversation if Michael Gallup was able to come through and post an impressive season for Dallas. And then you had been looking at an Amari Cooper contract where he's going to be one of the highest paid receivers in the NFL this upcoming season, where they owe him $22 million. But only $6 million of that's guaranteed. So they could have gone through and they could have cut Amari Cooper and saved $16 million and brought back Michael Gallup at a discount and possibly decided to use that money elsewhere, maybe at the offensive line, maybe on the defensive side of the ball. Whereas now with Michael Gallup having this severe injury at the end of the season, I think that it's probably a situation that makes it a little more likely that you actually get Amari Cooper playing yet again in Dallas this upcoming year at 28 years old. And at the same time, you probably get Michael Gallup coming in as well. So I think that we're probably going to see this Dallas Cowboys situation be almost identical to what it was a year ago, just because, that injury for Michael Gallup happened at the very end of the season. Very similar to what we were talking about with Chris Godwin. Don't know if he's going to be 100% good to go. Now, going over to Atlanta, we got another situation where a lot of receivers are leaving. You have Calvin Ridley saying he wants out. And that is impactful because Calvin Ridley just sat out the entire season. I think if he wants out of Atlanta, they're going to take him seriously. And then you got Russell Gage, free agent, Olamide Zaccheaus, Christian Blake, Tajay Sharp. So 5 wide receivers that potentially are not going to be on Atlanta this upcoming year. And that's why I'm coming out and saying, well, I was not a massive fan of Kyle Pitts in rookie drafts last year. And instead we were saying, hell, go draft Najee Harris, go draft Jamar Chase, go get someone that's going to produce year one based historically on the fact that those rookie tight ends aren't going to produce and they always disappoint their rookie seasons. Now, our part 2 of that plan was to go and buy Kyle Pitts everywhere you could. I think Kyle Pitts setting up to possibly be the tight end 1 in year 2 in Atlanta. Going through buying Kyle Pitts everywhere you can, especially if there are going to be this many targets available. And then in Arizona, you got Christian Kirk and AJ Green as free agents. I'd imagine they probably look to bring Christian Kirk back in, but AJ Green, this is a wide receiver that is going to be walking. DeAndre Hopkins looks like he has guaranteed money on that contract where he'll also be back. But of course, thank you so much for being a part of the flock and supporting the channel. Really hope that you enjoyed this video. Really hope you got something from it. Please go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, support the show on Patreon. And I think that's it. And have a great day.